Good morning, everyone. Well, good afternoon. It's been that kind of day today. So I'm here to talk to you about stress. I'm going to get us started, and actually talk about all the good stuff. We're actually going to talk about kind of what is it, and then we're going to move you through, and we'll talk about more things that you can do to kind of support yourself, in trying to recognize those early signs. And once they've popped up, what can we actually do about it? And the good news is there's a lot that we can do about it, which is fantastic. But the skill is really identifying those things quite quickly. So just to kind of understand where we are, we're going to move on to the next slide and have a look at the prevalence. So in the United Kingdom, 74% of us adults have felt unable to cope in the last year. And this can be for a range of things. It might be something in your personal life, it might be something in your professional life, it could be a combination of them both. But the vast majority of us have felt unable to cope. We know work-related stress costs our UK economy 28 billion per year. And that's before we get into any of the other mental health actual conditions. Chronic stress, if we don't do something about it, it can be a key sort of indicator, and it can massively impact our risk of developing a mental ill health. So actually getting an ill health diagnosis. So it's really important that we do something about that. If we look at our younger people, 60% of the young people felt unable to cope with the pressure to succeed. Especially if you think about sort of how young people deal with exam time, that's an awful lot of pressure. And to them, it can feel like the end of the world if things don't go right. So we do have to help them kind of at those key moments in their school year. The good news, though, is 44% of 18 to 24-year-olds benefited from some form of professional support to try and work against that stress and protect them from burnout. That's not something that we want our young people to be coming into contact with. We don't want anyone to come into contact with burnout, but especially when you're younger, that really will have an impact and a steer throughout your life. So we talk about stress an awful lot, but actually, what is it? So I turned to people who have far bigger research budgets than I do, and asked them what they felt it was. And they have both come back. We have the Health and Safety Executive, and we looked at the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And both are very clear. Stress is an adverse reaction to excessive pressure and other types of demand placed on them. That's from the Health and Safety Executive. Royal College of Psychiatrists went with people feel stressed when they feel like the demands or pressures on them are more than what they can cope with. We do sometimes hear people talking about good stress, and I almost understand where they're coming from, but actually that's pressure. The pressure to deliver, the pressure to meet a deadline, that's pressure. But if it moves into stress, we don't like that, because every one of us actually deals with stress and feels stress very differently in individual ways. So to understand that difference, we have our pressure performance curve. If anyone's from a medical background, you'll see this as something we started to look at in relation to blood pressure. That's where it comes from. So along the bottom of that graph, we have the amount of pressure. Not a lot of pressure over to the left, but then moving right through. And up the side, we have a low amount of performance, and then high, sort of that peak performance of where we can get to. Now, without much pressure, the likelihood is I'm not going to perform very well. I'm probably still sitting on the sofa in my pajamas with a cuppa, forgetting completely that I've got a job. That's where kind of I would be, and I don't do being bored very well. But there is some research saying that human beings do need to come all the way down to a little bit of boredom every now and again, not too regular, but there is a benefit to being really, really relaxed. We then have this really large, lovely section, and we can cope with a range of pressure here, and our performance kind of will increase massively in this comfort zone. The comfort zone is where we really should be spending an awful lot of our time. This is where we do kind of our standard work, maybe, is a way to look at this. But at the beginning of that comfort zone, I've probably just remembered I've got a job and I need to get up and I need to get ready and I need to get going. And then, so this is why that comfort zone is actually the really big section, because it's a full range. And then you get into work and you're doing your working day, and that's that full range. But then every now and again, there's a deadline comes along. There's a project that's due, and we move into stretch. And in this phase, it's a little bit of a thinner phase, because we can't actually maintain that as long as we could that comfort zone, because the pressure's gone up and therefore so is our performance. So stretch is good. Stretch is where we will do some of our best work. You know, this is where we kind of reach that 100%. We can give you our full capacity. All of our senses are engaged. We're kind of thinking faster. We're doing some really, really good work here. But the key is to make sure we go back towards the comfort zone. Because if we keep pushing and pushing when we're already stretched, we move into strain. And this is where we start hearing some of that language, sort of, you know, if you need to just give me 110%, well, unfortunately, 110% has moved you across into strain. And for a little while there, the pressure's going to keep building and you'll keep putting in as much effort. But strain is very sneaky. You'll feel like you're doing okay. You will absolutely be giving the whole of you. You will be putting so much effort in. But actually, what you achieve will start to drop. And it becomes too much. But you're still putting the effort in, but you're not seeing the return for that effort. So strain, again, is a much thinner section. We can do that for a much shorter period of time. Where the danger comes, unfortunately, is if we've kept going, we bump into crisis. This is where burnout lives. We don't want anyone anywhere near this section of the graph. The pressure's just building, but our performance and our ability to kind of deal with those daily pressures has just gone. And when we talk about burnout, an absolute physical, emotional exhaustion that can't be fixed by just taking 2 weeks off work. That's not what we're talking. We're talking about real significant burnout. So the hope for us is, yes, we can stretch, but we've got to make sure that we're moving back to the comfort zone. That's how we describe. So pressure is okay to stretch, but if you've moved into strain, then we're probably going to see some of those physical signs of stress. And everybody carries stress very, very differently. So hopefully that explains where we come from when it comes to pressure turning into stress. So now we have to think about ourselves. And it's really important. It's not something that we do very often, but we really should do it more often. We have to decide what stress looks like for us, because for everyone it's going to be very different. Your thoughts could become more negative. Everyone has that lovely inner voice that's not always very helpful. Most of the time, your thoughts are not that pleasant to yourself. You probably say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to another living being. You wouldn't say it to your worst enemy, but you keep saying it to yourself. And that's really not a good thing. We have to try and catch hold of that. Maybe as we've moved into strain and we know we're putting the work in, but we're not getting the results from that, that's going to impact our feelings. That's going to make us feel more negative about ourselves. In turn, has that impacted your behavior? Are you maybe working more than you should be? Are you avoiding work because work's the issue? Are you using work in your behavior to avoid something that's happening at home? And then the very dangerous bit is, how is it affecting you physically? We know enough to know that our mental health and our physical health are connected. One will impact the other. And if we're feeling on edge and if we're feeling stressed, potentially moving towards anxiety, maybe it's fight or flight, physical things will be happening in your body for an awfully long period of time that were never meant to be there. So just try and take a moment to think about how stress impacts on you. What are those first signs? Because human beings, we're not very good at recognizing those early signs. Culturally around us, we've got lots of lovely phrases that keep calm and carry on. Putting on our big girl pants, our big boy pants. But they're not very helpful. They're not conducive to us actually recognizing those first signs of stress so that we can recognize it and actually do something about it. So, what can we do? It would be great if we could understand ourselves better. And that's where we have to really sit down and do some work on ourselves. It's one thing, can we even ask for help? But more importantly, can we accept help? Have you identified, do you know who that person is? If we ask, who is the person that you're going to speak to in those times of real stress? Who can you talk to and tell the deepest, darkest secrets to? Do you know who that is? Do you have someone you can do that to? Can we identify the causes of the stress? What are our triggers? What are our pinch points that we need to kind of be aware of and prepare for? Have we got a well-being plan? Is that something that would work for us? Basically, we need to create ourselves our own toolkit, something just for us. It's really important that we have that toolkit. Some people need to write it down. Some people can keep it digitally. For some people, it becomes really creative and the toolkit becomes an actual thing. Putting the toolkit together could be part of the stress relief. But thankfully for you, I am about to pass you over to Sarah, who's going to help you with an awful lot more ways that you can support yourself in times of stress. So over to you, Sarah.
Hello, thank you, Em. That was a really good overview, thank you. So now we're moving on to things that we can do to help and prevent stress in your sort of workplace or in your life generally as well, I think. So I'm Sarah, I work for Northumberland Talking Therapies, and there'll be a little bit more information at the end about our service. So things that we can do to help with stress. So I thought I'd start with the stress bucket. So the idea of the stress bucket is that our ability to cope and manage stress and things that are going on with us, with our lives, is like a bucket, and the things coming in that top tap that you can see at the top, they're filling up our bucket. So it could be work deadlines, it could be being short-staffed at work and having to cover a bit more, it could be maybe not quite knowing exactly what your job is or what your role is. Those are all things that are going to be filling up that bucket, and it's, imagine that stress is the water filling up that bucket. So the tap keeps pouring, that's going to keep pouring in, and eventually that bucket will become full, it will overflow, and that will be sort of what Em was talking about with the burnout, becoming unable to cope when we might be kind of experiencing a bit of difficulty. So that's the top tap. Then we've got the middle tap, which you can see on the left-hand side there. So these might be things that we feel like help, but they're kind of short-term coping strategies. They're things that might give us a little bit of relief, but they're sort of not helping because you can see that water is getting recycled back into that bucket. So it might be things like using alcohol, just avoiding tasks or things that need to be addressed. Those things that kind of aren't resolving the situation, really aren't resolving the problem. And then at the bottom, you can see the bottom tap is letting out the water. So this is where we want to be. This is what we need to be doing, is letting that water out so that that water doesn't overflow the bucket and mean that we can't cope. So the bottom tap, we're looking at helpful coping strategies. So this could be having sort of problem-solving strategies, it could be having family support, it could be having a good work-life balance so that that work stress is coming in the top, but having that work-life balance is helping empty the bucket. It could be hobbies that you find really helpful to distract or to manage your own well-being, going for a walk, spending time with your pets. It could be anything at all that really sort of brings that stress level down. And the thing with the stress bucket is you can do this kind of in a written way because everybody works differently. Some people like pictures, some people like things written down. What works for you? Is drawing a really pretty bucket? Are you really creative? Is it going to be drawing that out on a piece of paper and making it all colourful, making it relate to your interests? That could be your way of sort of managing your stress and looking at how you can make it really visual to help you. Or you could do it in I'm a very written person. I don't really do visual stuff very well. So I tend to write my things down in a more kind of wordy way, but you can make it work however helps you really. So if we think about some helpful coping strategies to give us that bottom tap to get rid of the water, our first thing that I thought we'd look at is problem solving, which sounds maybe a bit simple, but sometimes when we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, we avoid those problems. We avoid the situations. We think, I won't think about it and it'll help. I'll just not deal with it. I'll just put it off. But that can make us feel more stressed because it's still there in the back of your head, making you feel worried, making you feel stressed. So what we want to do is address that avoidance. So problem solving helps us do that. So it's got 6 steps, which we'll talk through in just a second. It's good for practical problems, things that we're putting off, but actually maybe have got lots of different ways of solving them, or a practical sort of something you can do something about is how we describe a practical worry or a practical problem. And it's an evidence-based intervention. It's something that we use within our service, and we use problem solving and we help clients work through this sort of strategy. So if we have a look at the next slide. So step 1 is identifying exactly what the problem is. So we want to be really specific here, because the more specific you are, drilling down into what that problem is, what is the situation that I need to be dealing with, the easier it'll be to work through the other steps of problem solving. So we've got an example here. I have too much work to do and I'm working at home when I should be relaxing. So this person's got too much work on their plate at work. They're having to work at home. Maybe they're not getting family time. So they've thought about the problem and they've thought, the problem is I have too much work to do, and it sounds like they can't do it all. So you've got your problem, you've identified that. Step 2 is listing all the possible solutions. And as I've written here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They don't have to be sensible solutions at this stage. They don't have to be good solutions. Anything at all that would help, or you think would help fix that problem. So the examples here we've got, I could just quit my job. I could just leave my job and that would solve the problem. I could speak to my manager. I could stop working over my hours. I could ignore the problem. So as you can see, maybe some of those ones aren't quite as helpful as others, but that's where the next step comes in. So the next step is where we list the pros and cons, or the advantages and disadvantages of each solution. So with this one, we've got the solution of quit my job. Well, the advantages of that, I'd have time to spend with my family. I would, resolve the problem of not having too much work to do. But the disadvantages, well, they won't get paid. They might not get another job. Maybe they've got a mortgage to pay. So there's a few disadvantages to that problem. The next solution they've thought about is speaking to my manager. Well, they might get some support. They could come up with a plan together, put something in place, maybe delegate some of that work with their manager. Those are the kind of advantages. The disadvantages of sort of speaking to your manager, you might think, oh, well, if I speak to my manager, they might think I can't cope. It might be embarrassing to speak to my manager. So you would repeat this stage for each solution. So each of those solutions we had in step 2, you would work through this. So the advantages, disadvantages of every solution. I've not put them all on here because I thought it would just make the slide too big. So then number 4, look at your list, look at your advantages and your disadvantages. Which seems like the most practical, which seems like which has got the most advantages and least disadvantages, which seems realistic. So choosing that solution from your list of advantages and disadvantages. And then step 5, as you can see here, make an action plan. So with this, the more specific you make the plan, the better. The more the smaller the steps you can break it into, the easier it is to carry out. Because if you've got a big step in that action plan, you might look at that and think, oh, it's just, it's too much. And it causes that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of just, this is too much to deal with. So the more specific, the smaller the steps you can break that into. Step one might just be looking up a phone number. Step one might just be looking up the email address of someone you need to contact. Having that very small step at the beginning gives you a positive start to following that action plan, because you think, right, I've done that, tick it off, very small next step. So try and include, what, where, when, who do you need to help you with each step. Really be specific. And we've got the example in the next slide of this. So this person's chosen the solution to speak to their manager in the example we were looking at. So they've set their action plan out. So on Monday morning at work, I will make a list of things I can't get done in work time. It's quite a small first step. It's making a list. It's not contacting anyone yet. It's something that feels very actionable and very sort of practical to solving this problem. So Monday morning, they've given themselves a time scale. I'll make a list. Monday lunchtime. So they've got the time scale. They've got what they're going to do. They're going to draft an email to their manager to arrange a meeting. So that, step two is only in fact them drafting the email, sorry. So they've not even sent the email yet. The second step is just drafting that email. The third step, I'll send the email. So we're not making those steps big, we're making them nice and small. I'll send the email on Monday afternoon and ask to set up a meeting. Step 4, I will have the meeting with my manager and have the list of things I'm struggling with. So each of those steps is very specific, when they're going to do it, what they're going to do, what they need for it. So that's kind of the steps of problem solving. And then number 6 is carry out that plan. So step 5 was writing all those steps down. Step 6 is working through all those steps on the action plan, ticking them off, giving yourself, and that'll give you that little reward. I've done that one, can tick that off. Positive steps, building up to solving that problem that's been on your mind. And then at the end of carrying out the action plan, we're just going to think, did it solve the problem? Has this resolved the situation that I was dealing with? Is it okay? Do I need to do something else? You can then, if it's not solved your problem, return to that step 2, go back to your list of solutions with the advantages and the disadvantages. Is there another one that I can try? That didn't fix the problem. Let's try another one. And you can keep doing this until that kind of problem is solved. And hopefully you get it fixed, hopefully one of those solutions really helps and solves that problem before you get to the sort of more extreme ones that you might have written down just as a bit of a mind brainstorm or mind map. And just sort of judge anything else differently next time. Another kind of helpful coping strategy that I want to very quickly touch on, I'm not sure, I'm just looking at the time, got a few more minutes, is the Eisenhower matrix, which sounds a bit scary, I think, but this is sort of something you can use in your work. I would say you could use sort of in your work life, because sometimes in work, we've got lots and lots of different tasks, lots and lots of different demands. With this sort of strategy, we're looking at things that are urgent and things that are important. So urgent tasks are the ones that you feel like you've got to react to. They've got a deadline, they're time sensitive, maybe they impact the rest of the service or the rest of your job. So those are the ones that we really feel we need to attend to quite quickly. They're short term, time sensitive. The important ones are often the ones that lead to those long-term goals or the vision of the organization or the values of your organizations. These are really important, these ones, which is why they're called important. But they often don't get the time they deserve because those urgent ones come in and you take over, really. They take over, but we need to really be quite proactive with those important ones to make time for them, schedule in time for them. So if we go to the next slide. So once we've thought about what urgent and important are, this is the matrix. So we've got the important and not important down the left-hand side, and then urgent and not urgent along the top. So if a task comes into your workday that is urgent and important, so it's urgent, time sensitive, and it's important, we're going to do it now because it needs to be done now. It's time sensitive and it's important. If it's important but not urgent, we can schedule a time to do it. So it doesn't need doing right this instant. We can schedule a time to do that and pop that in that top corner. If it's not important but it is urgent, can we delegate it? Can we ask someone else to help out with that? because it needs doing, because it's urgent, but it's not so important that maybe I need to deal with it right now. Maybe someone else can deal with it. And then the not urgent and not important, it says delete or eliminate it, but we have to be careful with this. That, you know, I'm not encouraging you to just kind of delete your work tasks and get rid of them, because I don't think that would go down very well with anyone's boss. But maybe it's things like avoidance, maybe it's reading emails but not actually dealing with them, things like that. But what we want to be careful of is spending too much time in that top left-hand corner with the do it now. Is if we spend too much time in there, that can feel a bit like firefighting, feeling like we've got no control over our day, feeling like we're always solving problems. It can become quite tiring and quite exhausting. So we want to try and, if we can, limit how much time we spend in that top corner. We want to spend a little bit more time in that not urgent, not important, the top right, the lighter blue colour, because these are helping us achieve the long-term goals. It'll make us feel more in control of our day, more satisfied, and kind of give us more opportunities for growing the project that we're working on, giving us more opportunities. So that's the Eisenhower matrix, just to kind of organise your workday. And then I think I've got time to just touch on this very quickly. This is the 5 ways to well-being. So this is more kind of general advice, I suppose. The idea that having a balance of these 5 things across our day, across our week, helps us keep things balanced, really. So connecting is about connecting with other people. It could be connecting with family, with friends, talking to someone at the bus stop. It doesn't have to be going out for dinner. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be talking to someone in your day. We are social beings as humans, and we do need that bit of connection with other people. Keep learning is about learning, but again, this doesn't have to be learning a whole musical instrument. It doesn't have to be learning a new language. It can be just looking up something that you're interested in, doing a little bit of research, finding out something that you didn't know. None of these have to be big, huge projects. They can be little things. Being active, it's fairly self-explanatory, but being active in some way during the day. Can you take a 10-minute walk before you start your work day if you work from home, just to get some fresh air? It's really easy when we work from home these days to just get up, get to your computer, sit down, log on, and that's it for kind of the rest of the day. But can you just do something for 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning that gets you active? Give is the next one. So this is just about giving your time to someone, or giving, could be giving money to charity, but it doesn't have to be, absolutely does not have to be that. It could just be giving a smile to someone, giving a bit of time to someone who's having a difficult time. Just sort of that giving of something. And then taking notice is about just sort of being aware of what's around you, taking notice of what you're eating, just being in the moment and being a bit mindful about what's going on. We're all so busy these days that it's easy to just have your day pass you by, but just take notice of something. Take notice of your pet being cute on the bed, lying on the bed. Just take notice of something and try and be in the moment when something's happening. So that's very quick introduction to 5 ways to wellbeing. There are some more examples on there, but they are very small to read. I do appreciate that. So they will get sent out with the slides at the end, so you can have a wee look at what they are. But there's some good examples on there that, yeah, they don't have to be big things.